all I ever wanted to be, ever, was a medical doctor. That was a big dream of a small boy who was raised in a broken home in the urban slums of Lagos. But that dream died, literally died, as soon as I was offered admission to study medicine in Calabar. So within weeks of traveling by bus, 12 hours, from Lagos, which was in the west, to Calabar, which was in the east, where my medical school was, I became ill. Burning fevers, crushing headaches, but I wanted to be in class no matter what. Until the day I passed out in the library. I had gone to the library to read. I loved to read, and all I wanted to do was be in school. When I woke up, I could hardly stand. I had to hold on to the walls of the library, and lucky for me, I was on the ground floor that day, and I found my way out. I got outside the library and I waited for a motorbike taxi to take me home, much like the one I got here this morning. Quite wonderful, that bicycle taxi, yeah, never seen before. So much like that, I waited for one to come. One came by soon and asked me where I was going, where I wanted to go. And I looked up at him and I said I had forgotten where I lived. He couldn't believe me. I mean, he felt it was a joke. So where do you want to go? Where is your home? I'm saying, I really don't know. I was ill. But he wasn't very patient. He drove off. And I threw up. I vomited all over myself. The next biker came by and asked, where was I going? And I looked up with tears in my eyes and told him I did not know where I lived. I did not remember the name of the streets where I lived. I was really ill. He should please help me. He was patient. He waited. And I said, okay, why don't I try, come up with some names? So he said, okay, yeah. And in my way, I went alphabetically. A, Atimbo. That's not where I lived. Beecroft, no. Chalmers, no. D, nothing came. Edgerly, no. Egerton, no. Fuller, yeah. Take me to Fuller, I told him. But I didn't live at Fuller. My friend lived there, and I knew he would take care of me. I just couldn't remember where I lived, so I remembered Fuller, and I said, yeah, take me there. So the last thing I remembered was he helped me on the bike, and I saw the gates of our school, and I passed out again. The next morning, I woke up at our home in Egerton. No, it wasn't Egerton. Enobong. So I lived at Enobong. So the name was E, and I remember the E, but it didn't come to me, but yeah. Next morning I woke up at Enobong. That was the name of our street. And I saw women gathered around my bed. When I opened my eyes, I saw my mom as well. And as I am, I think sometimes I may be funny. I looked at them and I felt quite well. And I said, what's up? And they all laughed. But I saw tears in their eyes. They laughed with tears in their eyes. They were actually crying. Later that day, I passed out again. And this time around, I remained unconscious for 2 weeks. When I regained consciousness in the hospital, I had lost my hearing. I couldn't hear anymore. And the only way I knew that was when I went to the lounge in the hospital to watch TV, and it was Jesus Christ of Nazareth played at Easter. I couldn't hear a word. So I walked up to the TV, touched the button, and to my surprise, it was maximum volume. and I wasn't hearing a word. I was deaf. A week later, I was discharged from hospital, but because I had been in bed for so long, I just couldn't walk anymore. My joints were all stiff. Maybe I had some paralysis, I guess. But I just couldn't walk. So somehow they got me home, and my dad suggested later, like some days, why don't you defer your admission? And I'm like, are you serious? This is all that mattered to me. How could you talk about this? But for once, he said no. I couldn't believe it. I mean, this was shock. This was my dad, raised me single-handedly, never said no to me. I never asked for anything stupid, really. And I just couldn't believe this. Well, he said no, and he had a point. I was deaf. I could hardly walk. There was no way I would cope in medical school. But that was all I wanted to do. I wanted to be in school. It was hard to let go, but I had to, and I cried. I was forced to defer my admission to medical school for 1 year with some efforts on my side. We weren't rich enough to afford physiotherapy and anything, so I helped myself, jogged around. I was able to walk again. My hearing came back gradually, and at the end of the year, I was fit to go. I went back to school, worked hard, and graduated at the top of my class. I made it through medical school. But it wasn't an easy thing. Because of this, meningitis. Meningitis. That was my illness. That was my diagnosis. Epidemics of meningitis occur in the northern aspect of Nigeria, as you can see on the map there, because it lies in this zone known as the meningitic belt. It's a climate zone. The meningitic belt stretches from the shores of Senegal in the west to the hills of Ethiopia in the east, and it cuts across the northern aspects of West Africa. In this region, every year, the green region, it should be in red, really. Every year, thousands of young children, young adults, succumb to this deadly disease. It's spread by the air between people in close contact, and it's a hard thing to deal with. People die. Indeed, as we speak, this year alone, there have been 17,000 cases, indeed more than, with nearly 1,000 deaths in Nigeria alone. Remember that this is something that affects several countries. You can imagine if in Nigeria, the richest country, virtually the richest country in Africa, I guess the South Africans wouldn't agree, but it's obviously the biggest economy. If you have this number of deaths from a disease that can be prevented by vaccination, then we have a problem. Deaths that could be prevented by vaccination. And vaccines have been available for meningitis for decades, since the 70s. But it is one thing to have a vaccine. It's another thing entirely to get the vaccines to those that really need them. In my country, poverty, limited education, religious extremism, poor governance, lack of political will, these have all stood against the delivery of healthcare and vaccination to the people. And with these problems in hand, you wonder, what do we do? And so, meningitis is a problem. When I think about it, I find something else interesting. Look at that. Let me put that picture again. Interesting picture. That zone in red, in green. Remember, it should be in red. That zone in green is one of the hottest places, at least in that part of the world. Maybe North Africa is a little hotter, but it's humid, it's dry. It's an environmental issue. I realized that I had been a victim of a disease that was fueled by the environment and was infectious in nature. So there was an issue between environmental health and infectious diseases, and I was prey to that. And so when I got the opportunity, beyond doing medicine, treating people, to actually think of preventing disease in studying public health, I chose to study environmental health and epidemics at the University of Michigan School of Public Health, represented here by my beautiful socks. And so I studied public health. But my studies of public health helped me understand something else. Health communication, talking to people, relating to people about their health. I came to realize that people only take you seriously when they understand what you do, and why you do it. And I realized that sometimes the best way to get the message across is to tell a personal story, something real, something about you, that probably helps you do that work. And in getting this understanding, this revelation, this, would you say, discovery, I stumbled into the Aspen Institute. They, based in DC, I guess, wanted to hear stories from the developing world, from the global south. And I wanted to tell the stories I had of Nigeria and the developing world from my unique perspective. And so there was a match. I applied for a fellowship, and the Aspen New Voices Fellowship is now teaching me how to tell my story. Me, doing global work now, telling my story. Looking back, I realized I would never be doing any of this, being a physician, doing public health work, if I hadn't had the luck to survive meningitis. Remember, I don't know if I was even vaccinated. But I think I was lucky, very lucky to survive. I have treated patients myself, being a physician, and I had never seen anybody who had meningitis at that age when I got it that survived. Now, this is fact. Maybe in my limited experience, but I guess I was one of those few people that survived meningitis at that age. I do this work because I realized that many children, millions of children, would not have that luck to survive an illness like meningitis if they don't get the shots they need at the right time, the vaccines they need. My work in public health and global health isn't just limited to meningitis. I'm worried about Ebola, and I've been shouting about it as much as I can. I'm worried about polio, about measles. It's not about Africa just, it's about the world. These are infectious diseases that do not respect borders. They go everywhere. And so what am I asking you to do in telling this story? One thing, help me. Help me get vaccines to those kids, everywhere they are. Help me support the global work to, get people out of poverty, make them understand the need to get vaccines. Remember that when people are poor, they don't care about education, they don't care about health. They want to fill their tummies first. You don't blame them. A dead man doesn't get vaccines, and you need food to live. Poverty, like I mentioned, was one of the biggest issues. It underlies a lot of things. It underlies the lack of education. It underlies the poor understanding of religion. It underlies the fact that we don't have good governance. And as long as our governments are not strong, our governments are not good, we will not have strong health systems. So let's look at this thing from different points of view. You work in education, great. You work in development, great. You put people out of poverty, great. You work in governance, great. You do political work, great. We all are in this business. And it all comes down to one thing, keeping people alive to see the next day. So help me. Talk to your politicians. Help your NGOs, even here in Berlin. Germany is going to be hosting the biggest events for fundraising as far as vaccines are concerned next year, January next year. It's time to step up. It's time to support the cause. It's time to put in your bit. Thank you.